Beginning well before the American Revolution and continuing through to the Civil War in the 1860s, enslaved Black Americans had to fight to gain their freedom. Some were able to emancipate themselves through military service, others were able to purchase their freedom. However, these were not easily accessible avenues. Most enslaved persons who gained their liberty during this era did so through the Underground Railroad, a secret network of routes and safe houses that allowed freedom seekers to escape bondage in the South. This was an incredibly dangerous journey. An enslaved person needed a lot of factors to align for their escape to be successful. It's one of the most inspiring stories in American history, and one that's preserved in Cuyahoga Valley National Park, as the Ohio Erie Canal was a likely route on the Underground Railroad. Answers those questions and more is my friend, Park Ranger Pam Machuga. Ranger Pam, thanks for joining me this morning.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, why was the Ohio and Erie Canal used as an escape route on the Underground Railroad?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Ohio and Erie Canal went from Cleveland 308 miles down to Portsmouth in the Ohio River. So those enslaved people who were running away merely needed to cross that river, and the Ohio and Erie Canal was going to be a direct route from slavery toward freedom. Slavery here in the States was very unique. It's called chattel slavery. It meant that you were less than human, right? So you're less than human and you are treated accordingly. Someone else controlled everything about your life. They controlled where you lived, who you were going to marry. They could take your children away at any time. So the institution of slavery, I don't think we can fathom what that feels like.
So what was life like for the enslaved people who were trying to get their freedom on the Underground Railroad?
Terrifying, right? Because you're leaving behind not only everything that you hate, right, in the institution of slavery, but you're also leaving behind people that you love. And most times when you traveled on the Underground Railroad, you were traveling alone. It tended to be men that traveled because women did not want to leave their children behind, and it was very hard to travel with children. This is not a trip that is going to take a week or even a month. This trip could take months or a year to work your way from slavery towards freedom. And if you can imagine, every time you heard a dog bark or a twig snap, that could mean that someone found you. Right? I can't even imagine how terrifying it would be to flee the institution of slavery and hope that someone didn't catch you and take you back. But in 1850, they passed the Second Fugitive Slave Act, and that said that anyone assisting a runaway would be fined $1,000 per person.
And that's back in 1850.
1850.
So those are $1850, not today dollars.
$1850. Fined $1,000 per enslaved person you were assisting, and spend 6 months in a federal prison. I mean, think about that. I'm going to help someone else, but then I'm going to have to potentially go to prison, and who's going to raise my family, right? So it was really dangerous traveling to this part. You didn't know who you can trust, who was going to turn you in. So I would say fleeing on an Underground Railroad was terrifying.
Well, let's talk a little bit about John Malvin. I read a little bit about him. Tell us a little bit about the abolitionist movement here in Northeast Ohio, and maybe what John Malvin did.
Yeah, so John Malvin was a free Black, and he was born down south. Eventually, he is going to find his way up here to northeastern Ohio, and one of the jobs he has, right, is being a canal boat captain. He is actually able to buy his canal boat, the Auburn, and operate that, and even after he sold it back to the people he bought it from, it was a temporary sale, he captained it for them, right? And so he is captaining this boat, but when he is up here, one of the first things he does is to work to integrate the church that he is going to, right? So the pastor said, which pews would you like for the colored parishioners? And John Malvin said, I would rather be sent to Liberia than segregated in the church of the Lord.
All right.
Yeah, so he works, and what he realizes is, okay, if we bring these questions up, then maybe we can make a difference. So he works to repeal Ohio's block laws, which happens in the late 1840s. Wow. He works to make sure that kids can be educated. They form schools, and they find teachers, and they'll have one teacher for 3 months and then one for 4 months, right? But he's working for education. He is constantly working on behalf of not only the enslaved, but the free people who are living here in northeastern Ohio. Again, very few in number, but very active in the abolitionist movement.
So, well, that guy sounds like he rocks.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
doing so many things.
Yeah,
Just doing
absolutely.
so many things. So, how did he help on the Underground Railroad? You said he was a canal boat captain. Did he use his canal boat to help people get to the lake, Lake Erie, and to freedom?
Yeah, so that is what many historians believe, was that canals were often used, and because John Malvin was an adamant abolitionist, it is thought that he used that to help those enslaved.
So it's possible here in this lock that John Malvin took his boat with people who were escaping slavery all the way up to Lake Erie to get to Canada to freedom. So he could have gone like right past here.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So what did John Malvin do after the Civil War and after the institution of slavery was ended in the United States?
You know, it's so interesting because we always think that once the institution of slavery is ended, then it's over. But in reality, there was a lot of work to be done, right? There were schools that had to be organized. He wanted to make sure that people of color had the same rights as people who were white, right? And so that's what he did the rest of his life. He was very well known here in northeastern Ohio. He lived until he was in his early 80s.
Wow.
And he spent that entire time working to help his fellow people.
Well, what an inspiration John Malvin is. And Ranger Pam, thank you so much for sharing all these awesome stories about the Underground Railroad and the fight for freedom that you can find right here in Cuyahoga Valley.
Absolutely. And can I leave you with one thing?
You sure can.
Okay, so I love the story of the Underground Railroad because it talks to how people can use their lives to make a difference and make the world a better place. So what I always encourage people to do is to think about the world around you. Think about what you would like to change. If you can say that out loud, you're one step towards making that happen. And if everyday people whose names are lost to history can change the world and make it a better place, so can each and every one of us.
Man, what a great message to take home. Want to learn more about our national parks? Then hit that subscribe button, friend. Stay up to date and catch bonus features by following us on Instagram @OutSCIder.